All right. So, what we are doing today is that we're taking what we just learned with completing the square, and we're going to be looking at a different form of a circle equation. So, last week we talked about the standard form. All right. So, typically, if we have a center that is equal to the point HK and a radius that's equal to R, what was typically my equation for a circle? What did it always look like? So what's the formula for equation of a circle? So I did a lot of this last week. What's the formula for the equation of a circle? Good. So x minus h squared, or x minus the x value of the center, all squared, plus y minus k, or the y value of the center point, all squared, and it's equal to your radius squared. So this is known as our standard form. Occasionally it's called the conic form of an equation of a circle. Now, the form we're going to talk about today is called the general form, and it looks a little bit different, but we can convert between the two. So before we even do that, let's do some quick review. So for exercise 1, all I'm stating is what the center point is and what the radius is. Can someone tell me what the center point of letter A is? Not 1. Think about it. If we're subtracting something to the x and the y, but we're just left with x and y, what do we actually subtract? 0. So what do you think my center point is? 0, 0. Good. Now, what's my radius? 10. Take the square root of 100, you get 10. All right. What about letter B? What would my center point be? 5, 2. Now, why is it 5, 2 and not negative 5, negative 2? Right, we're supposed to flip these signs. Because remember, the minuses are in the formula for the equation of a circle. So the only way that these minuses become pluses is if our h or k value is negative. All right, otherwise they're just positive, so they keep the minuses. So we have to flip the signs. What's my radius? 6. Square root of 36 is 6. All right, what about this last one? What's my center? Negative 2, positive 11. What's my radius? Just 1. Square root of 1 is 1. All right, now that was just review from 6.1, which is what we covered last week. Now, the next part that we're going to be dealing with is that sometimes circles are not immediately placed in this form. And when that's the case, it's really difficult to identify the center and radius. So the only form that we can flat out identify the center and the radius of is the standard form. So in this form, that's the only form where we can get the center and the radius immediately from it without having to do any work. All right. Now, we can convert them by completing the square, which is what we extensively talked about. Now, do you guys want me to do one of the problems for example 2, just so you have an example of completing the square in your notes? Or are you guys good? What do you guys think? I'm just going to do one of them. All right, so just for funsies, we'll do one of them. So we'll do letter B because it's smaller numbers. So when we're completing the square, what's the very first thing that I got to do? Add the 7 to both sides. We're trying to leave a new spot for the C value. So this is A, B, C. We got to get rid of this C. So I'm going to add 7 to both sides. Thus, I get x squared minus 6x, leave a space, and it's equal to 7. Now, what do I need to do to fill in this space? How can I complete that square? Negative 6 divided by 2, all squared. In other words, we're doing b over 2, all squared. So what's negative 6 divided by 2? Negative 3. What's negative 3 all squared? Positive 9. So I'm going to add 9 here. What else do I need to do? Not yet. Add 9 to the other side. That's the step that most people forget. Remember, whatever you add to one side, you got to add to the other. So now we're left with x squared minus 6x plus 9 is equal to 16. Now we can go into our square rooting process. So remember, square root the first, square root the third, keep the sign of the second. So everything's going to be equal to 16, but what's going to go in my parentheses and it's all going to be squared? X minus 3. Square root of x squared is x. We keep the minus, that's in front of the second term. Square root of 9 is 3. And then it's all equal to that 16. So just like that, we complete the square. Now, the reason we did such extensive practice with completing the square is that we are now going to be looking at the general form of a circle, which looks something like this. So the general form of a circle is not separated by like x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. They actually already went ahead and factored it through. All right. So it looks like a bunch of x's and y's all in one form. Now, it's not too bad because all we got to do is that before we can identify the radius in the center, all we got to do is complete the square twice. All right. So within this equation is 2 completing the square problems. And the way that we look at this is that we want our x's to go together and we want our y's to go together. All right. And thus we have our 2 completing the square problems. Now, they already gave us some leeway here because if we label them in terms of A and B, this will be AB, AB. Do we have a C value in any of those? So is there just a constant on this side of the equal sign, nothing connected to a variable? No, there's not. So we get to go right into the next step of completing the square. So this is how you would set it up. I would rewrite this as x squared minus 4x, leave a big space for your C, plus y squared minus 8y, leave a big space for your C. It's all going to be equal to 5. So because there are no constants or singular numbers that are not connected to the variable on the left side of the equal sign, we can go straight into the next step of completing the square. So again, there are 2 completing the square problems, here and here. So let's complete the square for the x's first. All right. So if I'm looking at the problem with the x's, what do I need to do to fill in this C value here? It's the same process we've been doing. Don't let the y's throw you. Nope. So we've already gone past the adding things to the other side because we don't have any constants. So we're now in the actual completing the square part. So what do I need to do to complete this first square? Say that again. Right. We do negative. not negative, we do b divided by 2 all squared. So I'm doing -4, which again, if this is labeled AB, that's my b value. I'm going to divide it by 2, and I'm going to square all of it. So what's -4 divided by 2? -2. What's -2 all squared? 4. So I'm going to add 4 here. Now, whatever I do to one side, I have to do what to the other? So if I added 4 on this side, what do I got to do over here? Add 4. Now, let's look at the y's. So, what about the y's? How can I complete the square for the y's? We do -8 divided by what? 2, and it's all what? Squared. So this is A, this is B. My B value is here, so I'm going to do not negative. I'm going to do positive B divided by 2, all squared. Or B divided by 2, not positive B. So what's -8 divided by 2? -4, all squared. What's that equal to? 16. So I'm going to add 16 here. So if I add 16 to this side, what do I got to do to the other side? Add 16. So you'll actually add 2 different numbers to this 5. So if I clean this up a little bit, I get x squared minus 4x plus 4. I'm going to keep it in parentheses. Plus y squared minus 8y plus 16. It's going to equal to 4 plus 16 is 20, plus 5 is 25. So it's all going to be equal to 25. Now we're just going to do exactly what we've been doing with completing the square, but we're just going to do it twice. So we're going to do it once for the x's, once for the y's, which is putting it into this form. And it's all going to equal 25. So for the x's, what's going to go in my parentheses here? X minus 2 all squared. Good. So remember, square root the first, keep the sign of the second, square root the third. What about the y's? What goes in there? Someone besides Mariana. So remember, square root the first. Say, good. Y minus 4. Square root the first, keep the sign of the second, square root the third. Now, what does this look like to you? Isn't this an equation of the circle that we're used to? Yes. So now we got it into the standard form of a circle. All right. So now we can easily tell what the center and the radius is. So what's my center? 2, 4. What's my radius? 5. Square root of 25 is 5. So just like that, we had to do a couple of steps. They weren't too bad, nothing that we haven't done already, to get to this form. All right, and then from there, we can get the center and the radius. We cannot get the center or radius immediately from the equation without putting it into its standard form first. Standard form is the only form of a circle that gives you the center and the radius right off the bat. All right. So now we're going to graph this circle to the best of our ability. So remember what I said. You want to plot the center first. So I'm going to find 2, 4. So that's about right here. Then for radius, we're going to want to do 4 points of the radius. So we're going to count 5 away from the center in each cardinal direction. So north, south, east, west. So I'm going to count 5 north of the center. So 5 up from the center. So here, I'm going to count 5 down from the center, or to the south of the center. So here, I'm going to count 5 east, or to the right. So here, then I'm going to count 5 to the west, or to the left. So right here. Then when we sketch our circle, it needs to go through each one of those 4 points. So from there, you just draw a circle to the best of your ability. Doesn't have to be the prettiest circle. Good Lord, mine isn't. But just draw it to the best of your ability, making sure it goes through those 4 points. And thus, we have a circle. The circle has been born, yes. All right, so any questions on the actual process from going from the general form to the standard form? So again, when you're graphing the circle, you always graph the center first, and then you're counting the radius. So you're counting that many spaces away from the center in each cardinal direction. So north, south, east, and west. Think of a compass. You want to point in each direction. All right. Any questions on that? Yes. 1, 2, 3. No, I count 5. Yeah. No, I counted 5 on each side. What was the center? What's our center point? All right. So let's keep going with some more practice here. All right. So let's do. All right. So let's look at the next page and we're going to look at example A. All right. So we're going to do the exact same process that we've been doing. All right. We're going to get the standard form of the circle and then we're going to solve for, not solve, but we're going to write out what the center is and what the radius is. So first things first, you want to group your x's and your y's together. So there's my x's, there's my y's. Now, in either of those parentheses, is there a constant? Meaning, is there a c value in either of those parentheses that we need to move over to the other side? Yes, no, maybe. No. So in other words, what I mean by constant is there's no number that's by itself that's not connected to a variable. Since it's not, we go straight into the completing of the square process. So I have x squared plus 8x and leave a big blank, plus y squared minus 4y, leave a big blank, and it's going to equal negative 16. So what will be my new c value for the x's if we do b over 2 all squared? So for the x's, if we do b over 2 all squared, what is my new c value? It'll be what? 16. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared, 16. Now, when I add 16 to this side, what do I got to do to the other? Add 16. What about for the y's? What is my new c value here? It'll be 4. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is positive 4. And then what do I need to do to the other side? Add 4. So if I clean this up a little bit, I got x squared plus 8x plus 16 plus y squared minus 4y plus 4 It's going to equal to negative 16 plus 16, 0. So we're just left with 4. All right. Now we're trying to put it into our parentheses all squared form. So for my x's, what's going to go into my parentheses now? What factor? X plus 4. Square root the first, keep the sign of the second, square root the third. So that'll be x plus square root of 16 is 4. What about my y's? What we got? Y minus 2. Square root the first, keep the sign of the second, square root the third. So this would be y minus 2. And it's all equal to 4. So there's my standard form. So again, this is now in standard form. All right. So that being said, what is my center point? Negative 4, positive 2. Someone besides Mariana, what is my radius? 2. Square root of 4 is 2. All right. Let's do one more, and then we'll be done for the day. And there's a reason I want to do one more. Let's do letter D. So letter D looks disgusting, but we're going to do it anyway. And it's actually easier than it looks. All right. First things first. On the left side of the equation, do I have any number that is completely by itself, meaning it's not connected to an X or a Y? Yes. What number? 260 right here. So what's the very first thing I need to do? Subtract 260 to both sides. That goes away. I'm left with 5x squared minus 70x. I'm going to go ahead and put that in parentheses. Plus 5y squared minus 20y, put that in parentheses, is equal to negative 260. Now, this is where it's going to differ a little bit. So, before I can start completing the square, I have to get it so that the squared variable has a 1 in front of it. And the way I can do that is by factoring out a number from each set of parentheses, meaning that I can divide both terms in the parentheses by the same number, but it'll make this x squared have a 1 in front of it and this y squared have a 1 in front of it. What number do you think I'm going to divide out? 5 from both. So I'm going to divide both of these by 5 and both of these by 5. Now, we keep the 5 on the outside. All right. And we now have x squared minus 14x. I'm going to leave a big space. Plus, so I'm still factoring the 5 out of here, but it's going all the way over here. Plus y squared minus 20y, big space, is equal to negative 260. Now, here's what happens when we factor. And I'm going to put parentheses just to know that the 5 connects to all of this. All right. And then we're just going to go about business as usual. So what number would I put right here for the x's if I do b over 2 all squared? So what's negative 14 divided by 2? Negative 7. Then what's negative 7 squared? Positive 49. Now, here's where it gets iffy. So, if I have a number here, Remember, whatever we do to one side, we have to do the other. However, I'm not going to add 49 here. I'm going to add a different number. What do you think that number would be? I'll give you a hint. If we're multiplying 5 to this entirety, let's say we multiplied 5 back through, what would this number then become? $49 times 5, yeah. So what would that be? 245. So what this is saying is that since we took out the 5 still exists. We have to take this 49 and multiply it back to the 5 when I add it over to the other side. Because technically, even though we got 49 within the parentheses, it's still being multiplied by 5 on the outside. All right. So I would add 245 over here. Now, I'm going to do the same thing for my y's. All right. So for my y's, what do I got? What's my b value? So what's negative 20 divided by 2? Negative 10. What's negative 10 all squared? 100. So I'm going to add 100. So what am I actually adding to the other side? 500. Because just like with the x's, I got to take this 100, multiply it to the 5 in order to include the 5 in our problem. So I now have 5 times x squared minus 14x plus 49 plus y squared minus 20y plus 100 is equal to, can someone add up these three numbers for me? It's what? 485. Now, before we do our factoring, I can now get rid of this 5. How do you think I will get rid of this 5? Divide both sides by 5. So I can't get rid of the 5 until after I do my completing of the square process. All right? Because from there, we want it to look like, we want our final answer to look like this one right here. So it doesn't have any number in front of it. So now I can get rid of it. So if I do 485 divided by 5, what am I left with? 97. So I have x squared minus 14x plus 49 plus y squared minus 20y plus 100 is equal to 97. And then finally, we're just going to do our last step. So I'm going to do this quickly. So square root the first, keep the sign of the second, square root the third. I get x minus 7 all squared plus square root the first, sign of the second, square root the third, y minus 10 all squared, and it's equal to 97. So very quickly, what's my center? 710. What's my radius? 97 is obviously not a perfect square, so we can just leave it as what? Not 97, but square root of 97. So that process just had one extra step to it, but it's pretty much the same thing. So just note is that if your y squared and x squared values do not have a value of 1 in front of it, you're probably going to have to factor a number out. And then just remember when you do complete the square and you got to add stuff to the other side, make sure you multiply it to that number that you factor out first. Any questions? All right, so you now have all the information that you need to complete that delta math from last week. So the 6.1, 6.2 delta math, you should now be able to complete that last section. You also need to complete the completing the square delta math that is for a grade as well. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and post your exit ticket. It's pretty quick. I just need you to complete this square. And you don't have to do it twice, just a singular one. So all you're doing is just completing that square. It's just a singular one.